Hey everyone, my name is Mark Williams. I'm the Chief Instructor for T3, also known as Trigger Time Training in Longmont, Colorado. Today we're going to talk about a discussion based on something I think I've chosen to neglect quite a bit, and that's defensive or home defense shotguns. Now I understand home defense shotguns, there's a plethora of choices you can choose to implement. We're going to pick three of our top shelf choices, and just because they're top shelf doesn't mean they come with the top shelf price. After we get done discussing a few of the models we like to look at when choosing for home defense, we'll talk about some accessories and modifications. So I don't want to take too much time in an introduction, let's just get started. Back in the late 20s, shotguns, pump shotguns for example, really became a preferred method of defense and offense for professional users, whether it was a federal agency or municipal or state police departments. In the 50s and 60s and even the 70s, we saw a prolific change in the way that we implement shotguns and also the training we use them for. So a lot of times the old bird gun that we think of that grandpa or great-grandpa had back in the 1800s and early 1900s is kind of making way to these new tactical models. Shotguns are really intuitive to use. They don't take a whole lot of training, and if it's a home defense situation, they aren't really the best choice to make. With minimal training, as long as you're providing safe practices, you can teach a teenager, you can teach a wife or a spouse who chooses not to shoot a whole lot, or if you're a male and you really like this stuff, you can go out and get really good proper training on them. What I have in my hand right here is our lowest cost and one of the best shotguns really in the industry. This is a Mossberg 500. There's tons of different variants that you can find in the market. This is one of their classic models. It comes with an 18.5-inch barrel, and it's a 5+1, which means it holds 5 rounds in the tube plus 1 in the chamber. You can get it in different types of configurations. You can get it in a 3+1 if that's what your state or local laws permit. 5 is this one, or even 7 rounds. There's another model that's called the 590. It's a little bit of a step up from here and more of a tactical grade, if you will. They're really the same firearm as far as how it works and how it operates. Let's talk about some pros and cons to the Mossberg 500, and then we'll go from there. First and foremost, the biggest pro is it's an inexpensive gun. You can find these for anywhere from about $300 up to $400 or $500 for a little bit more pricey model. They're very, very basic in design and use, and they're very light. Starting in the rear here, back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, we used to see all those beautiful wood stocks. They've kind of given way to synthetic or plastic stocks. They're less expensive, and they also make the gun a little bit lighter. Moving up from there, one of my favorite features that a Mossberg possesses that not many other tactical shotguns does is a tang safety. So if I have the gun up on a threat, I can activate and deactivate the safety very quickly. We'll see with some of the other models that can become somewhat tiresome and even a task with where they're located ergonomically on the gun. From there, this has a very, very simple sighting system. If you think about an over and under or side-by-side shotgun that you typically see for bird hunters, we know they have front beads, which is this brass front sight on there. It doesn't get any more basic than this. I point the gun at a threat, I line up my eyes to the barrel and find that bead and put it on my target. Really simple to use, and it's very caveman in thought process. Aside from this, this gun's really lightweight. I don't know the weight off my hand, off the hand, so I'd be lying to you if I told you, but it's a really lightweight gun. Now that can also be a con. When we see lighter weight guns in a shotgun, as we all know, have pretty violent recoil, it can make the felt recoil seem a lot more than its heavier brother. So that's something to consider. But that being said, the Mossberg 500, just because it's a lower price model, does not make it lower price at all. We still use these actively in law enforcement and military. SWAT teams use them for entry. Tactical teams use them on counterinsurgency and anti-piracy and over in Afghanistan, for crying out loud. Very reliable. I've shot thousands and thousands of rounds through a 500, and never once have I had it stop or malfunction on me. If you typically see videos or users suggest that it does, what we mostly see as instructors is students who short stroke the actual operation of the pump and don't fully eject the round, and then they attempt to reload that spent cartridge back into the chamber. With an aggressive pump, that shouldn't happen too often. Once again, this is the Mossberg 500. They make it in different variants. They also make a corrosive resistant model, so if you live in the southeast or the northwest and you're around that salt a lot, it will defend against that corrosion. So really good option, very cheap if you're looking for an introductory shotgun or one for a youth or something like that. Really good option to go with. The next model, continuing on a pump thought, our pump system, is going to be your Remington 870. As far as reliability and functionality, the Mossberg and the 870 are really apples to apples. What I will say is a Remington is a touch more refined than what you might find in its inexpensive counterpart, the Mossberg 500. Starting at the rear, it has its own proprietary synthetic stock. You can get it in wood. You can also get modifications from Magpul, which make these really unique and very tactical in look and appearance as well as operability. It has a trigger guard safety. So as I mentioned prior to that, unlike the Tang safety, to activate and deactivate the safety, when you're on your target, you have to push it inboard towards your chest if you're a right-handed shooter, and then find it somehow and push it away or outside to deactivate the safety. Arguably speaking, if you're in a defensive situation, getting the safety off is much more important than turning the safety on. But when you're stressed out or potentially with a lot of family or in a confined space where you have a lot of neighbors, like in an apartment complex or maybe a condominium or a multifamily dwelling, getting that safety back on should be considered a priority anyways, and you just have to get some training and use to function that safety on and off. The trigger on an 870, respectfully, is a little bit more refined and crisper and smoother and lighter than its Mossberg brother, like I said before. The bolt release is ergonomically placed, but I will say, even as a 6 foot tall, 200-pound guy, getting my hand on that bolt release is pretty difficult. You may have to break position to do that, to actually pump or operate the safety to load that first round or to reload an empty gun. Moving forward, it's got a pretty generic handguard. The handguards can be replaced once again with Magpul. Surefire and different lighting companies also make handguards for these to add on a light to it. We'll talk about lights in a little bit, but that's a dire consequence if you don't have a light on your defensive shotgun or any firearm for that matter, if it's going to be home defense. The final thing I'll say is this is an 870 tactical, so this comes from the manufacturer with an extension tube. I believe this captures 2 more rounds. Let me digress. I believe this is a 7+1. You can get it in 5+1, 6+1, 3+1. It depends on what your state and local protocols and restrictions are. Hell, you can even be a competition shooter, and on the Mossberg, it doesn't matter, and get extensions that go up to like 10 rounds in the 2+1 in the chamber. So there is the ability to hold a lot of rounds in your shotgun. With that being said, some other things that you'll find on this model, or you can get upgraded for a model like an 870, is a Picatinny rail. The nice thing about a Picatinny rail is it affords me the ability to add on a red dot scope, whether it's an aim point or an EOTech or some other type of scope, which makes sighting a lot faster and easier. Now, what I've chosen to do, and it comes standard on the tactical model, but you can upgrade dang near any of them, is use ghost sights or ring sights. Simply put, the rear sight is very similar to like an M4, M16 rear peep, so it's a circle on a front bead. So when I acquire it, in that time it just took me to demonstrate, I was able to acquire a proper sight picture and sight alignment with this peep sight. You can see by that demonstration it doesn't take much thought process to do that in a stressful environment like a home invasion or somebody wishing to do you unwell in your residence. So the 870 is a really good model. I would consider it the step up from the Mossberg 500. These retail for a little bit more. Expect to pay $500 to $800. Nighthawk and Wilson, they're 2 of the finest American 1911 manufacturers really in the nation. They make aftermarket shotguns, and those can range up to $2,000 or $2,500. The nice thing about the 700s, or I'm sorry, the 870s and even the Mossbergs, is they're really modular. You can change out dang near everything on them, make them faster, lighter, stronger, so on and so forth. I would say if you're in that $500 to $600 range, the Remington 870 is a really good model for you to potentially use and train on for home defense. The next model is a Benelli M4. This is a automatic shotgun, or better known as a semi-automatic. So unlike the pop shotgun, which means I have to pull the trigger and then pump the gun to put a new round in the chamber and fire it, this uses gases and pistons to actually function the bolt, which will reload the round upon the next trigger pull. The drawback to an automatic shotgun is anytime you introduce gas or piston into an operating system, that also increases felt recoil for the end user. So as if a 12 gauge slug or a buckshot is already bad enough for recoil, we're feeling more felt recoil in our bodies when we introduce these type of piston guns into it. So that's something to consider. If you're watching this video and you're a smaller frame male or female, or maybe a teen that's looking to get into guns, that's going to potentially be a problem and maybe a little bit intimidating. You can get buffer systems and things to put into these that will reduce that a little bit, but you have to accept kind of the philosophy, if it's too hot in the kitchen, get out. You're going to get more recoil with an automatic gun. That's just kind of known. The other unique thing to a Benelli M4, which makes me choose this over other lesser priced semi-automatic shotguns, is the actual operating system. So this uses a piston rod system, and Benelli spent a lot of time engineering a system that would accept multiple rounds and pressures. So one of the big issues that you may or may not have thought of in the past is there's more than just a shotgun shell. There's 2 3/4 inch, there's 3 inch, I believe there's now 3 1/4 inch slugs, buckshot, birdshot, double loud, all these different types of loads. The problem with that is if I introduce those into a gun and it's not set up like a Benelli, it may be finicky on what it chooses and what it likes and dislikes. So to have the peace of mind and comfort to know that whatever I really load this with, as long as the chamber, which right here indicates it's safe to use, I can use better judgment to know it's probably going to fire. For civilian, that may be as simple as all I have is this XYZ amount of ammunition, and that's what I have to use for my gun. For law enforcement or military, they're using different types of payloads for different types of reasons. Maybe they're breaching a door, or they're an entryman, or maybe they're security. They may use different types of projectiles for different reasons. So the Benelli M4, some other things about it that I really like is it has a pistol grip. As I said earlier, when you introduce piston and gas into a shotgun, it increases your recoil and felt recoil. By allowing me to have a pistol grip, I can now control the recoil quite a bit better than I can with like a tang grip or like a typical rifle grip like we'd see on a conventional or classic shotgun. Additionally, this one comes standard with the Picatinny 1913 rail, and it also comes standard with ghost rings. These ghost rings are much more robust, I hate to say it, than the excess sights on a Remington. They're military grade, they're military spec. They're very, very accurate and they're very quick. Once again, that quick it took me to acquire a sight picture on a threat. So the Benelli M4 is another great option for you if you choose to use competition shooting or you want a little bit faster home defense gun. The downside, of course, is the price point and the weight. First, the weight. These can be up to a third or even a half more heavy than a pump shotgun. And then the price, you're looking at anywhere from $1,200 perhaps for a used gun all the way up to $2,000 and more. You can get a lot of different modifications for these. These have been around for quite a while now. You can get extension tubes if you choose to be a competition shooter. You can get dowels in there if you have state restrictions. They usually come standard with swivel studs for slings, so if you're a tactical user or you kind of like that whole thing, you can wear a sling with it, whereas on the Remingtons and the Mossbergs, you have to purchase aftermarket things. So the final thing I want to talk about real quick with you guys is some modifications you can make to your shotguns to make them operate and function a little bit better and more efficient. I'll use this Remington 870 for example, but whether you have a Winchester or a Mossberg or some other manufacturer, I'm pretty sure you can find comparable add-ons. So first is the buttstock and the forend. Those are your pieces of furniture that can be upgraded for a pretty economical price. Magpul, as you all know, is a polymer maker. They're the who's who of carbine add-ons, and they make polymer magazines, which are really reliable, and that doesn't fall short for their shotgun adaptation. They have a kind of like a MOE grip or buttstock for the shotgun for the 870 as well as for the Mossberg. It does a few cool functions for you. Number one, it allows you to change the stock length of pull, which is the distance from where you hold it to where it actually butts up with your shoulder. You can extend that or make it shorter depending on your height, your weight, or comfort. It also has a cheek weld adaptation, so you can raise or lower your cheek weld depending on your bone structure and kind of your ergonomics. And the same thing for the handguard. It doesn't allow for modularity, but what it does allow for is 3 unique points that you can connect any of the Magpul furniture or accessories to. So if you want to put a swivel stud on there for a sling, if you want to put a Picatinny rail on there for a flashlight, it allows you that function. Some other things you may choose to do to your shotgun is if you do have that 1970s 870 Express with the vented ports, you may choose to slap on a more tactical barrel like this 18.5 heavy contour barrel. Accuracy changes a little bit. When you shorten the barrel, you're going to get a wider pattern of your shot, but for home defense, that's not necessarily a bad idea. So you can adapt an older gun to become a newer gun, or vice versa. Some other things you can add on to almost any 870 is a 1913 Picatinny rail that allows you to put on their red dots like EOTech 512s, the XPSs. You can put an Aimpoint Micro T1 or a Burris Fastfire on there. There's lots of different options. Anytime you can make the gun more efficient for your uses, it's generally a good thing. From there, what I will say is this right here that I'm turning right now, this is a muzzle device that Remington sells on most of their tactical models. I know that Mossberg also sells muzzle devices. I'm not quite sure what Remington is advertising this as. My guess would be for the civilian market, it's some type of blunt force or bludgeon, kind of for extreme close range. This is technically called a standoff. So when you talk about law enforcement and military, and you talk about door breaching or forcible entry on a fibrous door like a wood door or even a steel door, even on ships for anti-piracy, we need to get distance from the actual muzzle to the bore to allow the payload to actually defeat whatever we're trying to break, which is usually a lock. Another thing that a standoff is used for is when you shoot into those wood or metal frame doors, you get blowback and debris into the muzzle, and the standoff allows to clear that easier. And third, if you're putting this into like a wood door, or also known as a fibrous door, it allows you with these teeth to purchase that door nice and firmly so it doesn't move or buck off of it when you're moving really fast. All three of those measures aren't really something that us as civilians need to be concerned with. Neither do we need to be training on something like that or implementing it. Thinking outside the box, if it comes with this, what better way to defend yourself if you discharge all the rounds and miss, God forbid, or you have a stoppage or malfunction with the operation of the gun. If you're close to your threat, you could bludge it and use it for self-defense if you've already determined that self-defense is warranted and needed. So that's certainly something you could add to it. The cool thing about the 870, when it comes to these muzzle devices, it's adapted by the choke. So if I were to take this out and then I decided, you know what, I'm going hunting with my friends, it's duck season or geese season, I can then put a modified choke in there or a full choke depending on what I'm shooting at, and I can make this into a hunting gun. That's really cool that you have the ability to do that. What I will say is you do have to, I apologize for my phone there, what you do have to do is you have to be cognizant of if I have some type of modified choke in my gun, it will render slugs inoperable. I cannot use slugs because I'm creating a choke, and basically I'm making the diameter of the barrel shorter so that spread stays tighter for a longer distance. If I were to shoot a slug out of a choked rifle or a shotgun, it could really hurt you, it could kill you, and it's probably going to ruin the gun. So make sure when you go to your retailers or to a professional instructor, you ask those questions about what I can use and what I can't use. And as always, when you're dealing with shotguns or any firearm, always follow your state and local protocols and restrictions on what you can and cannot do. The final thing I'll say is talk about some external features and some thought process that goes into implementation of using a defensive shotgun. So whether it's the Mossberg, the Remington, or the Benelli, which are three of the top shelf shotguns we really consider, if it's going to be a self-defense gun, you got to have a light. It's very difficult to control a shotgun and hold an offhand flashlight when navigating your home defense setup, so we recommend an on-weapon light. The issue is people come in and they spend $600–700 on a shotgun, and then they hear the heartache of having to spend another $200 on a really good flashlight like a Surefire Streamlight. Simply put, not having a flashlight on your home defense weapon is like not having gas in your engine for your car. It's mandatory to have it. I can't say that enough. The last thing we want to have happen, which you can YouTube and Google tons of reports on college-age children who come home and surprise their kid or their parents, and the parents unknowingly and accidentally shoot their children and kill them. And that's just one example of some negligence that we see in the industry. So that's really important that you have that light to positively ID your threat, as well as navigate different types of environments and atmospheres.